far away from Earth, among the quiet stars. A human engineer named Evan worked alone on his small ship called the Fixer. He traveled from planet to planet, repairing machines, engines, and even alien technology when he could understand it. He liked his quiet life, fixing things no one else could. But one day, while Evan was floating near a dusty asteroid field, his ship picked up a strange signal. It wasn't like any normal distress call. It was full of static, broken words, and a voice crying in fear. Evan adjusted the frequency, and then he heard it more clearly. A child's voice, trembling and desperate, saying, "Please fix my mom. She won't stop shaking." The message repeated, growing fainter with every loop. Evan frowned and checked his scanners. The signal came from a nearby planet, one that was marked as unexplored in his maps. He knew the smart thing was to ignore it. Many such signals were old or traps laid by pirates. But something about the child's voice touched him. It sounded scared, but not dangerous. "Just a quick look," Evan muttered to himself. T-programmed his ship to follow the signal. As he approached the planet, dark clouds covered most of its surface, and the land below looked rocky and broken. His scanners warned of energy spikes underground, but nothing alive on the surface. Still, the signal was coming from there. He landed his ship gently on a flat rock near a deep canyon. As he stepped out in his suit, the wind was cold and the air thin. He scanned for life signs and caught a faint pulse nearby. "Hello, anyone?" "Here," Evan called out. Suddenly, from behind a rock, a small figure peeked out. It was the child, but not human. She had pale blue skin, large violet eyes, and tiny antennae on her head. She was shivering, wearing torn clothes, and looked like she'd been crying for days. When she saw Evan, her eyes widened with hope. She ran toward him and grabbed his hand. "You came. You really came. Please, fix my mom," she begged. "Where is she?" Evan asked softly. The child pointed toward a dark cave not far from where they stood. Without waiting, she pulled him along. As they entered the cave, it grew colder and darker. Evan turned on his suit's lights. There, deep inside, lay a tall alien woman. Probably the child's mother. She was lying on the ground, her whole body shaking uncontrollably. Her eyes were closed, and her face twisted in pain as if she was trapped in a nightmare. Evan kneeled beside her and used his scanner, trying to detect illness or injury. But the device showed nothing unusual. No virus, no damage, no poison. What happened to her? Evan asked the child. She sniffled and said, "We lived in the village near the old ruins. One day, she went inside to look for food or something to help us. When she came out, she was like this." She just started shaking and wouldn't wake up properly. Evan's mind raced. He had heard of strange alien ruins that carried old technology, often dangerous. "What kind of ruins?" he asked. The child's face twisted in fear. "People say they're cursed. No one goes near them. But we were starving, so she went. I didn't want her to... ... Double quotes, the child broke into tears. Evan sighed deeply. He could leave. He wasn't a doctor or a hero. But the child had no one else. And this shaking, it wasn't sickness. It was like something was stuck inside the mother's mind. "Show me the ruins," Evan said. The child hesitated but nodded. She led him through a hidden path between rocks. After a long walk, they reached an ancient structure half buried in the ground. It was made of black stone, with strange symbols glowing faintly. Evan felt uneasy, but he stepped closer. As he touched the wall, a hidden mechanism activated, and a soft blue light filled the space. Suddenly, a hologram appeared, an image of an old alien being with many eyes. The voice from the hologram echoed, "This is the Echo device. It captures the mind's strongest memory and locks it in an endless loop. Do not touch if you value your sanity. Evan's eyes widened. The mother must have accidentally activated this device, and now her mind was trapped in her deepest memory, repeating it forever, and that was causing her body to shake non-stop. That explains it. ... double quotes, Evan whispered. The child looked up at him with big, hopeful eyes. Can you fix her? Please. Evan knew this wasn't about repairing a machine. It was about saving a mind. But he was a fixer, not of just machines, but of broken things, no matter what. He looked at the child and promised, I'll try. I won't leave her like this. Inside, he knew it was dangerous. The warning was clear. Minds could get trapped. But Evan had to try. He packed his tools, studied the symbols, and prepared for a journey not across space, but into someone's mind. And deep down, he wondered, what memory was so strong, so painful, that it could trap a person forever? Evan stood in front of the mysterious alien ruins, feeling the cold air wrap around him like invisible fingers. The glowing symbols on the dark walls seemed to pulse gently, as if alive. The child clutched his hand tightly, her violet eyes pleading silently for him to hurry. He took a deep breath and turned away from the ruins, determined to get back to the cave where the mother was still trapped, her body helpless and shaking. The walk back was silent except for the soft crunch of gravel underfoot. When they reached the cave, Evan knelt beside the mother again. The shaking had not stopped. In fact, it seemed worse. Her breathing was shallow, her lips trembling, and sweat covered her forehead. She looked as if she was running a marathon in her mind, though her body remained on the cold stone floor. The child knelt by her mother's side, holding her hand tightly, whispering in a language Evan couldn't understand. The child's small antennae drooped with sadness, and her shoulders shook with silent sobs. Evan placed his hand on the child's back gently. I think I know what happened, he said softly. She touched a machine inside the ruins. It traps your mind in a memory, repeating it over and over. The child looked at him, her lips trembling. Can you wake her up, please? I've tried shaking her, screaming. She doesn't hear me. Evan stared at his toolkit. He wasn't trained for this. He was a fixer of engines, gears, and wires, not minds. But still, a problem was a problem. And he hated leaving anything broken. He took out his portable mind scanner, a tool he'd barely used but kept, just in case. He placed it gently against the mother's temple. The screen flickered, showing waves and pulses of brain activity. What Evan saw made his stomach twist. Her mind was stuck in an extreme loop, the same neural pattern firing again and again like a stuck recording. She's reliving something. Over and over, he whispered. What is she seeing? The child asked, her voice so quiet, it was almost a breath. Evan shook his head. I don't know. But if I don't help her soon, her mind, it might burn itself out. He thought hard. The ruins warned not to connect with the device, but maybe, just maybe, he could interface with her mind directly through his scanner, tracing the signal back to the source in the ruins. But doing that was risky. If the machine sensed his mind, it could trap him too. Still, Evan couldn't leave the child alone, watching her mother suffer. I'm going to try something dangerous, Evan said. But you have to trust me, all right? The child nodded quickly, wiping her tears. I trust you. Please save her. Evan connected wires from his scanner to his suit's neural link. He'd never done anything like this, but he hoped his engineering skills could guide him through. He activated the link, and suddenly his mind stretched like being pulled through a narrow tunnel of light and sound. A sharp buzz filled his ears. Then everything went black. When Evan opened his eyes, he wasn't in the cave anymore. He stood in a shadowy world, the air thick with fear. The sky above was red and swirling. he saw the alien mother running, panting hard, her eyes wide with terror. A massive shadow chased her, a creature taller than buildings, with glowing red eyes and fangs like swords. She screamed, stumbling, crying out in terror. Evan realized this was her memory, her deepest fear. The echo device had captured this moment and was forcing her to relive it again and again. "It's not real," Evan muttered. But the mother couldn't hear him. She was trapped, running for her life from a monster that probably didn't exist anymore. Evan tried to call out to her, but his voice was faint. The mind world was not like reality. If he couldn't reach her emotionally, he'd be stuck as just another shadow. He remembered an old saying humans had: "The only way to beat fear is to face it." But how could he make her see that? Then an idea sparked in Evan's mind. He pulled from his memories of old human stories, myths, and jokes. He imagined the giant monster and then reshaped it in his thoughts. Suddenly, the terrifying creature tripped over its own feet, then got up and started dancing, clumsily, awkwardly, but ridiculously funny. The huge beast twirled, shook its massive hips, and even tried a silly backflip, falling flat on its face. The sky changed color from deep red to soft orange. The mother stopped running, confused. She turned slowly, her eyes wide as she watched the giant act like a clown. For the first time, she laughed, a small, uncertain laugh, but real. After broke the loop. The air lightened, the ground stopped shaking, and the monster disappeared into mist. Evan felt himself being pulled back into his body, back to the cave. He gasped loudly as he woke up, sweating and dizzy. The child was shaking his shoulder. "Are you okay?" she cried. Evan sat up, breathing hard, and looked over. The mother had stopped shaking. Her body was still, her face calm, and slowly, her eyes fluttered open. She blinked, looking around, confused but awake. The child rushed to her, hugging her tightly and crying with joy. The mother weakly lifted her hand to stroke her child's head, a faint smile on her lips. Evan smiled too, exhausted but happy. He had done it. He had broken the loop. The mother was free from the nightmare. And as he sat there catching his breath, he realized that sometimes the mind was just another machine, one that needed the right tool to fix. And sometimes that tool was laughter. Evan sat quietly against the cave wall, still feeling the weight of the mind journey he had just returned from. His body ached from the strain, but his heart felt lighter, knowing the mother had opened her eyes and stopped shaking. The child didn't leave her mother's side, clutching her hand and whispering soft words that Evan couldn't understand. Yet the feeling of love and relief was clear in every glance. The mother looked at Evan with weak but grateful eyes, her lips moving slowly. The child translated softly. She says, "Thank you." She says no one has ever helped us before. Evan smiled gently and nodded, though inside his mind was still restless. He knew the problem wasn't fully solved yet. He had broken the loop in her mind, yes, but the root cause was still active. The machine inside the ruins was still functioning. If someone else touched it, they too would be trapped in their worst memory. And that thought bothered him deeply. "Where are the ruins exactly?" he asked the child. She pointed in the distance, beyond the rocky hills. "Not far, but ... no one goes there. Everyone is afraid. They say ghosts live inside, and if you go close, you'll never come back." Evan's curiosity flared stronger than ever. He had to see it up close, understand it fully. He couldn't leave such a dangerous thing lying around. If he was truly a fixer, then this was the ultimate broken machine waiting to be repaired. "Stay here. Take care of your mom," Evan said, standing up and checking his gear. He grabbed his scanner, his datapad, and some light weapons just in case. The child looked worried. Are you sure? The ruins are cursed. Evan chuckled softly. I've already stepped into one mind. A ruin won't scare me now. With that, he set off. Following the path the child described, the sky was gray, and the wind howled between the rocks. As Evan walked, he felt like eyes were watching him, though the scanners showed no life forms nearby. After a long hike, he finally saw them, towering black structures half buried in the ground. Their surfaces marked with glowing lines like veins of light under dark skin. The ruins seemed ancient beyond time, built by a race long vanished. Evan felt both awe and unease. As he stepped closer, the symbols on the walls brightened slightly, reacting to his presence. At the entrance, there stood a broken pillar with carvings that looked like warnings. He used his scanner to translate some of the writings. Echo device, memory trap. Only those who control fear may escape. He muttered under his breath, so it wasn't a curse, just misunderstood technology. He stepped inside, his boots crunching over dusty stone. The air was cold and dry, and every sound echoed eerily. The deeper he went, the more the walls were covered in symbols and drawings, images of beings connected to a large central machine with waves radiating from it, like thoughts being pulled from their minds. Finally, Evan reached a massive chamber. In the center stood the echo device itself, a tall pillar of black crystal surrounded by circling metal rings that hovered and spun slowly. Blue light glowed from its core, casting ghostly patterns on the walls. As he approached, his scanner beeped wildly. The energy readings were unstable, yet strong enough to trap a mind with ease. There was a control panel, though dust-covered and cracked. Evan brushed it off and connected his datapad, hoping to interface with the ancient system. His screen lit up with alien script. Luckily, the translator software managed to convert some of it. Options appeared: activate, disconnect, reset, and terminate. But many of the functions were locked. He tried to dig deeper into the system's logic. Then he found it: the purpose of the device. It was originally a training tool designed by the ancient race to test courage. Warriors would confront their greatest fear inside their mind, and if they overcame it, they would gain clarity and strength. But over time, without maintenance, the machine became corrupted. Instead of releasing minds after the test, it locked them inside forever, endlessly replaying the worst memories. Evan shook his head. A machine built to build strength turned into a prison. He had to shut it down. But the system's safety commands were broken, and any wrong input could cause a meltdown. He sighed. Looks like I'll have to do this the old-fashioned way. He examined the crystal core, the source of power, and the mind-link mechanism. He carefully placed small charges in key positions, enough to shatter the core without causing an explosion that could collapse the chamber. As he worked, a voice whispered, but not out loud. It was in his mind. Why do you destroy what tests strength? The voice asked, echoing in his thoughts. Evan froze. Was the machine aware? Because you're not testing anymore. Torturing, Evan answered, speaking aloud. I fix things. And you're broken. The voice sighed like wind through trees. So be it, human. Evan stepped back, pressed the remote trigger, and with a muffled blast, the crystal core cracked. Light spilling out like liquid stars. The spinning rings slowed, then stopped. The entire ruin seemed to sigh a deep, fading breath. The energy readings dropped to 0. The echo device was dead. Evan stood there, catching his breath, feeling the heavy silence of the chamber. Then he turned and walked back, leaving the dead machine behind. When he returned to the cave, the child ran to him, eyes bright with hope. Is it gone? She asked. Evan smiled gently. It's gone. No one will get trapped again. The mother, sitting up now and stronger, looked at him with gratitude. Though she still looked tired, her eyes were clear. The child hugged him, whispering, "Thank you, human." You fixed everything. Evan ruffled her hair softly. That's what I do. And deep inside, he felt proud, not just for fixing a machine, but for breaking a curse that was never truly a curse, only a forgotten test lost to time. Even after destroying the echo device in the ruins, Evan couldn't shake off the feeling that something still lingered in his mind. As he walked back to his ship, the skies felt darker than before, as if the ruins had left behind a shadow that now followed him. He tried to dismiss it as exhaustion, the result of diving into another's mind and surviving a near-ancient trap. Yet every time he blinked, he caught flashes of the mother's nightmare, the red sky, the monstrous shadow, the endless running. When he returned to the cave, the alien mother was sitting up now, propped against the wall, still weak but present. Her violet eyes met his with a quiet understanding that needed no translation. The child smiled brightly, running to Evan. "You're back. Is the ruin gone now?" she asked, eyes hopeful. Evan smiled weakly and knelt beside her. "The machine is dead. No one else will be trapped." But inside, he wasn't sure if he spoke the truth, not completely. The mother, her voice still shaky, spoke a few words. The child translated. She says, she can still feel pieces of it in her head, like echoes that don't leave. Evan frowned. He had feared this might happen. The echo device had been designed to trap minds, yes, but destroying it might not be enough to free someone completely. The imprint of the machine, the mind echo, could still remain inside its victims, replaying fragments of the memory even after the main core was shattered. Evan sat back, rubbing his face. He hadn't expected the problem to run this deep, but he wasn't the kind of man to leave a job half done. There might be a way, he muttered to himself. The child tilted her head. What way? Evan stood and checked his equipment. I need to go back into her mind. The machine's gone, but what it left behind is still echoing in her thoughts. If I can guide her directly, maybe I can quiet the echoes. The child looked worried. Can you do that? What if you get stuck this time? Evan gave a tired smile. Then I'll just have to be smarter than last time. He set up his Neuralink gear again, connecting the scanner to his own mind and placing the pads carefully on the mother's temples. She shivered slightly at his touch, but didn't pull away. The child watched nervously, clutching her mother's hand. Be careful, the child whispered. I will, Evan promised. Then he activated the link. This time, the pull into the mind was rougher. He was dragged into darkness, first complete and heavy, like a void. Then, colors bled through red, purple, dark blue. He stood once more in the mindscape of the mother, but it was different now. The monster wasn't there, not fully formed. Instead, fragments floated around like shards of glass memories, broken and incomplete, all spinning around a black hole. In the center of the sky, it was the mind echo itself, a swirling pit of energy that tried to pull everything into it. Evan felt his feet dragging towards the hole, but he fought to stay upright. He called out, I'm here to help. Can you hear me? A voice whispered from the shards, faint and shaky. Who is that? Where am I? It was the mother's voice. Evan shouted louder. I'm the one who saved you from the monster. You have to find me in here. Don't let the echoes swallow you again. For a moment, silence. Then, a figure appeared, formed out of light flickering and unstable. It was the mother, or at least her mind's version of herself. She looked lost, her eyes distant. I keep hearing it, she whispered. It won't stop. The black hole pulsed as if responding, and whispers filled the air. Unintelligible, but terrifying. Evan moved closer to her, reaching out his hand. Listen to me. The machine is gone. The ruins are dead. But this is just a leftover shadow. You can beat it. She shook her head slowly. I'm too weak. It pulls me in. Evan felt the gravity of the echo growing stronger. His own thoughts began to blur, pieces of his own memories flickering his childhood. His days on Earth, his loneliness among the stars. If he stayed too long, he'd lose himself too. Then he remembered this wasn't just her mind anymore. His mind was connected too. That meant he could inject his thoughts, his emotions, directly into the space. He closed his eyes and remembered laughter, silly jokes, moments of joy, old friends who made him smile even on bad days. He focused on that feeling, forcing it outward like a wave of warmth. Suddenly, the air around them brightened. The black hole shuddered as waves of light pushed against the darkness. The whispers screamed in anger but began to fade. The mother looked up, her eyes wide. What is that feeling? Evan smiled. It's hope. It's laughter. It's something stronger than fear. He reached for her again. Take my hand. I'll pull you out. She hesitated, but then her hand clasped his. The connection between them flared like a star, and the black hole shrieked one last time before collapsing in on itself, vanishing into nothing. The shards of memory stopped spinning. The sky cleared, turning soft blue. Evan exhaled, his body heavy, but the weight lifting from his mind. You're free now, he whispered. The mother smiled faintly, her form stabilizing in the light. Thank you, human. Then everything faded. Evan woke up in the cave, gasping for air. The child hugged him tightly, crying, You're back. Is she okay? Evan looked at the mother, who was sitting up, her eyes clear, her face peaceful. She nodded slowly, touching her chest. The voices are gone, she said in her own tongue. Akkad translated, smiling through tears. She says, she feels peace. Evan leaned back, exhausted but content. The mind echo was gone. The trap of the ruins was broken, not just in metal and stone, but in the mind itself. And for the first time, Evan felt he had fixed something truly important, not just for them, but for himself too. Though Evan had successfully broken the mind echo and freed the alien mother from her mental prison, he couldn't forget the experience. Something about the way the darkness had gripped his thoughts lingered, as if part of that fear had followed him back into the real world. Still, seeing the mother awake, her body steady and her eyes filled with peace, gave Evan a deep satisfaction he hadn't felt in years. The child's endless gratitude and their joyful reunion filled the cave with warmth that had been missing for too long. Yet, even in that moment of calm, Evan knew his job was not done. The mother was free. Yes, but she remained weak, and the child explained that the fear had stolen more than just peace from her mind. She had lost memories, two names, faces, parts of herself still hidden in shadow. She remembers me, the child said quietly, but she forgets the village and my father. She looks like she's searching for something in her own mind, but she can't find it. Evan sighed heavily. The ruins might have been destroyed and the mind echoes silenced, but the aftershocks still lived inside her. It was like repairing a broken machine, but discovering that some of its vital pieces were still missing. Evan sat down, deep in thought, running his fingers over his tools. The mother watched him quietly, her eyes full of curiosity and the faintest trace of fear. He needed a way to guide her back, not just to consciousness, but to herself. But how could he restore memories that were lost inside her? Then an idea struck him. When he had been trapped in the mind echo, he had been pulled into her worst fear, the monster and the endless chase. If that fear was the barrier, maybe entering her mind again, with her as his guide, could help retrieve the lost fragments. I need to go back, Evan said aloud. The child stared at him, mouth open in shock. Again, but you said the danger is gone. The machine is gone, Evan corrected, but her mind is still lost in parts. If we don't help, she might never fully recover. The mother, though she didn't understand his words, seemed to sense his determination. She touched his arm gently, her eyes asking the same question. Why would you risk so much for strangers? Evan didn't have an easy answer, but he knew the truth. Out there in the dark, between stars and alien worlds, he had always been alone. Fixing things was his way to feel needed, to feel connected. Maybe that was why he couldn't walk away. With careful preparation, Evan set up the neural link once again. But this time, he made an important adjustment. He would keep the child connected through a light relay. She couldn't enter her mother's mind, but her voice could reach them. A lifeline. Talk to her if she looks scared. Evan told the child. She needs to hear someone she loves. The child nodded solemnly, gripping her mother's hand tightly. Evan took a deep breath and activated the link. Instantly, he was pulled back, but this time, the mindscape wasn't a nightmare of monsters. It was an endless gray plain, empty and cold, with no sky or ground, just fog and nothingness. The mother stood alone in the distance, her form flickering, her eyes lost and blank. She looked around but didn't seem to see Evan. He called out, "Hey, I'm back. I'm here to help." But his voice was like a whisper in a storm, weak and fading. The mind echo had shattered, but the mother's consciousness was trapped in a maze of forgotten places. Then, softly, another voice echoed, faint and clear. It was the child's voice, transmitted through the link. "Mom, I'm here. Please listen. The human is helping you. Don't be afraid." The mother flinched slightly, as if the voice reached her. Evan smiled. "That's it. She can hear her. Okay?" He pushed forward through the fog, step by heavy step, until he stood in front of the mother. Her eyes met his, still fogged but faintly aware. "I'm here to help you find your memories," he said. "You're stronger than this emptiness." Slowly, cracks formed in the gray fog around them. Like glass, the air began to split, showing glimpses of images, flashes of a village, a partner's face, the child's first steps. The mother shook, her body trembling as the images swirled too fast. She clutched her head, groaning in pain. "It's too much," she whispered. Evan touched her shoulder gently. "Focus on the voice. Focus on your child." As if on cue, the child's voice returned, clearer now. "Mom, remember me. Remember our home, the lake, the singing tree." The mother gasped, and one of the cracks widened, revealing a scene of a bright blue lake surrounded by tall singing trees that chimed in the wind. The sound was beautiful, almost magical. The mother's eyes widened, tears forming. "The lake, the song," she whispered. The fog began to dissolve around them, each memory returning slowly but steadily. Evan stood by her side, guiding her toward each fragment, helping her piece together who she was. Faces returned: her partner, her neighbors, her life before the ruins. The more she remembered, the brighter the mindscape became, until the endless gray was replaced by a field of stars and soft light. The mother stood tall now, her eyes clear and full of life. She turned to Evan and smiled, truly smiled. "Thank you, human," she said in her own language. Then the stars faded, and Evan woke up, feeling the warmth of sunlight. He opened his eyes to see the mother sitting upright, the child hugging her, both laughing and crying. Evan smiled, exhausted but content. The fear was gone. She was whole. Again, not just awake, but complete. And Evan, for the first time in a long time, felt like he had truly saved a life, not with tools, but with hope, courage, and the simplest power of connection. In the cold, silent stretch of space, where planets spun like forgotten marbles, and the stars watched like distant gods, a human engineer named Evan drifted alone aboard his repair vessel, the Fixer. He was used to solitude, his only companions. the tools strapped to his belt, and the endless hum of machinery. Evan was a man of systems and circuits. Someone who saw the universe not as a grand mystery, but as a vast machine broken in places, in need of hands that knew how to repair. He didn't believe in ghosts, curses, or cosmic omens. So when his ship's communication console lit up with a distress signal unlike any he'd received before, he treated it like any other problem to be fixed. Yet, something about the signal chilled him. It was not a formal distress code or a garbled mayday. Call it was a cry, Cade's voice, desperate, terrified, echoing through the static of space. Please fix my mom. She won't stop shaking. That simple, raw plea repeated over and over, tangled in bursts of interference and broken words. Evan adjusted his instruments, tracking the source of the signal to a remote, uncharted planet. The maps listed it as unexplored, with a warning about energy spikes and magnetic storms, but nothing else. He knew better than to ignore distress calls, especially one that sounded so human, despite clearly coming from a non-human source. Against his better judgment, Evan set course for the planet, curiosity and duty driving him forward. The world below was a landscape of gray rocks, jagged canyons, and a sky smeared with heavy clouds that glowed faintly purple. As he piloted the fixer to a safe landing spot near a broad canyon, the scanners beeped uncertainly, no clear life signs, but odd pulses of energy beneath the surface, like a heartbeat hidden under stone. He stepped out into the thin atmosphere, his suit keeping him warm against the biting wind. His boots crunched over brittle rock as he called out, "Hello, anyone here?" At first, there was only silence. Then a small shape darted from behind. A boulder. Evan raised his scanner instinctively, but lowered it just as quickly when he saw it was a child and alien girl. Barely waist-high, with pale blue skin, large violet eyes shimmering with tears, and two thin antennae atop her head. She looked exhausted, clothes torn, and face smudged with dirt, but her eyes locked onto his with unmistakable hope. She ran to him, grabbing his gloved hand with tiny, shaking fingers. "You came," she cried, her voice trembling. "Please? Fix my mom. She's 6. She won't stop shaking." "Where is she?" Evan asked gently. The girl pointed toward a dark cave near the canyon wall. Without hesitation, Evan followed, the child tugging him forward. Inside the cave, the air grew colder, the walls slick with moisture. Evan turned on his helmet light, the beam cutting through the darkness until it landed on the figure of a woman lying on the stone floor. She was tall, her body lanky and delicate, her skin the same pale blue as the child's, but marked with glowing lines that seemed to pulse faintly with each tremor that racked her body. Her eyes were closed, her face twisted in pain, and her limbs twitched violently as though caught in an invisible storm. Evan knelt beside her, running a diagnostic scan, but his tools showed nothing, no infections, no wounds, no toxins. "What happened to her?" he asked the child. The girl sniffled, wiping her eyes. "She went to the old ruins to find food or something to help us. When she came back, she started shaking. She hasn't stopped since." Old ruins. Evan's interest peaked. "Where?" The girl pointed again, this time beyond the canyon. "Over there, past the hills. But people say it's cursed. The grown-ups are afraid of it." Evan frowned. He didn't believe in curses, but ancient alien technology often came with dangers and misunderstandings. If the mother's condition was linked to these ruins, he had to investigate. "Stay here with her," he instructed. "I'll check the ruins and see what I can find." The girl nodded, eyes wide with fear and hope. Evan made his way to the ruins, the sky darkening with swirling clouds as he approached. The ruins emerged from the ground like the broken bones of some forgotten Beast black stone structures etched with faintly glowing symbols, half buried under centuries of dust and rock. At the entrance stood an archway, its surface covered in inscriptions. Evan's scanner struggled to translate the text, but a rough interpretation formed. Echo Divisa, trial of the mind. Only the strong return. Inside, the air was heavy, the walls humming with dormant energy. As he ventured deeper, he discovered a central chamber where a towering crystal stood encircled by floating metallic rings. The energy readings spiked wildly. This was no temple. It was a machine, ancient and still active. A nearby console flickered weakly, its controls alien yet somewhat familiar in their layout. As Evan interfaced his datapad, a hologram flickered to Lefa, multi-eyed alien. Its voice a low hum. The Echo device tests the mind. Face your deepest memory. Triumph and emerge stronger. Fail and be trapped in fear eternal. Understanding struck Evan like a hammer blow. The mother had activated the device, and her mind was now caught in an endless loop of her worst memory. No wonder her body shook. Her mind was reliving terror with no escape. But how to free her? Shutting down. The machine directly risked severing the mind's connection permanently, trapping her in a waking coma. He needed a different approach, one that required him to enter the mindscape and guide her out. Dangerous? Yes. But Evan was no stranger to risk. He returned to the cave, explaining his plan to the child as best he could. The girl clung to his arm, scared but trusting. "Please save her," she whispered. With a deep breath, Evan connected his neural link, patching himself into the scanner attached to the mother's temple. Light swallowed him, and then he was inside. The mindscape was a storm of red skies, towering shadows, and the sound of footsteps running, always running. Evan saw Hertha, mother fleeing endlessly from a monstrous figure, its form shifting, its eyes burning like coals. She screamed, stumbling, crying out in a language of pure fear. Evan chased after her, shouting, but she couldn't hear him, trapped as she was in this echo of terror. Then Evan remembered a mind trap could be tricked, rewritten from within. He focused on his thoughts, reshaping the monster, imagining it stumbling, turning into a clumsy, dancing fool. Slowly, the nightmare changed. The monster tripped, flailing awkwardly, its menace dissolving into ridiculous antics. The sky's hues softened, the air grew lighter, and the mother stopped running. Turning in confusion, she began to laugh, weakly. At first, then stronger. Evan reached for her hand, pulling her back toward clarity, reminding her this was not real. Light enveloped them, and Evan awoke, gasping, back in the cave. The mother's body was still but no longer shaking. Her eyes fluttered open, and she saw her child, who hugged her tightly, sobbing with joy. Evan smiled, his muscles aching, but his heart light. But the job wasn't done, not yet. The mother was free, yes, but weakened, her mind fragmented. Memories had been lost, pieces of her life still trapped. Evan decided he had to go back, not just to stop the shaking, but to restore who she was. Once more, he entered her mind, but this time the landscape was a foggy plain, blank and cold. The mother stood there, lost, her eyes empty. The child's voice echoed faintly through the neural link, guiding her mother, reminding her of home, of love. Evan followed the sound, guiding the mother through the fog. Collecting fragments of memories: her partner's face, the village by the singing trees, the lake where they played. Each memory lit up the darkness, piecing her identity back together. And when finally the fog cleared, the mother stood whole, her eyes bright and aware. "Thank you, human," she said, her voice clear. Evan smiled, exhausted but satisfied. When he woke, the mother was sitting up, the child by her side, both smiling, both whole. Evan had done it, not just fixed a broken mind, but restored a family. And for the first time in his lonely life, he felt not just like a fixer of things, but a healer of hearts, a true human in a vast and often broken universe. In the cold emptiness between stars where light rarely touched and sounds vanished into the void, a human named Evan piloted his lone repair ship, the Fixer, searching for work among the scattered colonies and derelict stations of deep space. Evan was a fixer by trade and by heart, his hands skilled in restoring broken machines, patching decayed systems and coaxing life back into what others abandoned. But what he never expected was to answer a distress signal, not for a ship or a station, but for a mother, an alien mother. The signal reached his vessel faint and distorted, threaded with static, but unmistakably a child's voice, crying over and over, "Please fix my mom. She won't stop shaking." It wasn't formal, wasn't a code or structured plea. Just a desperate cry looping through the endless dark, and Evan, despite himself, felt a tug of obligation and curiosity. He followed the coordinates to a small, unnamed planet not marked. On standard charts, a place of gray cliffs and sky choked with heavy clouds. His scanners showed odd magnetic disturbances, but no signs of life. Yet the voice persisted, urgent and pleading. Landing cautiously, Evan stepped into the bleak landscape, calling out, unsure of what he'd find. To his surprise, from behind a jagged rock formation, a small figure stumbled forward, a child, but not human. She was small with pale blue skin, large violet eyes swollen from crying, and two thin antennae on her head. She ran straight to Evan, grabbing his hand with shaking fingers, her voice cracking. "You came. Please, my mom. She's still shaking." She led him to a nearby cave where her mother lay tall, thin, with the same pale skin but covered in faint bioluminescent patterns that glowed dimly with each tremor that racked her body. The mother's eyes were closed, her face twisted in silent agony, limbs jerking as if trapped in some unseen torment. Evan scanned her with his tools, but found nothing physically wrong. No wounds, no infection, no poison. When he asked the child what happened, she said her mother had ventured to the old ruins nearby, places everyone feared, seeking food or something to help them survive. But when she returned, the shaking began and never stopped. Understanding this was beyond ordinary illness, Evan asked to see the ruins, and despite her fear, the child guided him, warning of curses and vanishing people. The ruins stood ancient and foreboding, half-buried structures marked with strange symbols that pulsed faintly, whispering of old technology misunderstood. Inside, Evan discovered the heart of it, a towering black crystal surrounded by floating metallic rings, humming with dormant power. His scanner barely translated the inscriptions: Echo Devisa, Trial of the Mind. Face your deepest fear, or be trapped within forever. The machine wasn't just broken, it was dangerous, a relic of an ancient race's test of courage that had decayed into a trap. The mother must have triggered it, her mind ensnared in an endless loop of terror, her body reacting with unceasing tremors. Knowing direct shutdown could kill her mind entirely, Evan realized he had to enter her mental prison and guide her out of risk few would dare. But he was a fixer, and this was a problem only he could try to mend. Evan returned to the cave, explaining to the child his intent to connect to her mother's mind through his neural link. The child clutched his sleeve, eyes wide with hope and fear, but nodded. "Please save her," she whispered. With a deep breath, Evan connected himself, and light engulfed him as his consciousness was pulled into her mindscape, a place of red skies and endless storms, where the mother fled from a colossal shadow with burning eyes and claws of darkness. She screamed, running without end, her terror fueling the nightmare. Evan chased her, shouting her name, though he didn't even know it, but his voice was lost in the wind of her fear. Then he remembered that minds could be tricked, rewritten, reframed from within. He imagined the monstrous shadow stumbling, becoming Clumsy, then ridiculous, a dancing fool, tripping over its own feet. Slowly, the nightmare shifted. The monster's menace melted away into absurdity, and the mother slowed, confused, then began to laugh. Faint and broken, but real. Evan reached her, grasped her hand, and told her it wasn't real, that she could stop running. Light burst around them, and Evan awoke, gasping in the cave. The mother's body finally still, her eyes fluttering open. The child sobbed with joy, hugging her tightly, and Evan felt relief. Yet he saw the mother's gaze still clouded, parts of her mind lost, memories fractured. He knew he had only done half the job. Evan decided to dive again, not to stop the shaking, but to restore what was stolen. This time, the mindscape was a gray void of mist and silence, where the mother stood alone, hollow and incomplete. Through the link, the child's voice echoed gently, calling to her mother, reminding her of home, of love, of things long past. Evan gathered these echoes, guiding the mother through the fog, touching the fragments of her life, a lake surrounded by singing trees, a partner's smiling face, the laughter of villagers. Each memory lit the darkness, piecing her together until the void bloomed with stars and light. The mother stood tall, her eyes bright and clear. "Thank you, human," she said, and Evan smiled, exhausted but victorious. When he awoke, the mother was sitting up, whole and aware, the child hugging her tight, their joy filling the once somber cave. Yet Evan wasn't done. Something remained unsalvaged. The echo device still stood in the ruins, waiting to ensnare another soul. He returned, tools in hand, determined to dismantle it. In the ruins, the crystal hummed with a dying pulse, as if aware of his presence. The inscriptions spoke of tests of strength, but Evan saw only danger. He placed charges at critical points, enough to destroy the core without collapsing the ruins entirely. As he prepared to detonate, a voice whispered in his mind, the machine itself questioning, why destroy a test of courage? Evan replied aloud, because you don't test anymore. You only trap. With that, he pressed the trigger and the crystal cracked, light bleeding away as the machine died with a sigh, the rings falling still. The echo device was no more, and Evan returned to the cave, ensuring the child and her mother would never face such danger again. The mother recovered slowly but surely, her memories mending day by day, her gratitude for Evan boundless though words often failed her. The child clung to Evan as he prepared to leave, asking if he would stay, but he smiled gently. "I have more broken things to fix out there," he said. She hugged him tightly, promising never to forget the human who saved them both. As he returned to the fixer, Evan felt a change within himself. For years, he had repaired ships, machines, lifeless things, but now he had fixed something far deeper: family, a mind, a bond between lives that no tool could measure. Alone again among the stars, Evan smiled, knowing that somewhere on a lonely planet, an alien child and her mother lived because he had dared to answer a plea, because he had chosen to fix not just what was broken, but what was forgotten.